Hi there, I am Bonnie McCaffery and I'm so glad you've come back for another VidCast. This month I am here with Charlotte Warr Andersen, who does absolutely stunning portrait quilts, and I have been a fan of your portrait quilts for a long time.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Oh, they are just wonderful and they're so realistic. It's amazing with a little bit of fabric how you have made that happen.
Yeah, I think I do a good job at it.
I think you do too. I think you do too. Now this is one of your most recent quilts, and this is a stunning piece, and this is just really beautiful. Tell me the story about this quilt.
Well, this is actually from a design my daughter Aubrey drew, and I thought it would be fun to collaborate with her. She's quite an artist. And so she painted the figures, and I did all the stitching on it. And since it is a silk quilt, I decided that I needed to do these designs that are quilted into it without marking those designs on the fabric.
Wow, yeah. And you've got a lot of different quilting designs in here, which is pretty neat. Which brings us to your brand new book, hot off the press.
Yes.
And this, you know, I watched you do your presentation on this, and this was absolutely fascinating. One line at a time. And what's that mean?
It means that you can do these quilting patterns without marking them on the fabric, and you build it by doing it one line at a time.
Okay.
And it's a really fun, easy way of working.
And gives you a variety of different fills.
Right.
Which is really nice. So pull over your samples and let's take a look and see how this works. You're going to really like this.
So this is my simplest design. I call it, well, it's a basic cross hatching, but I call it a plaid because it gets changed up. So I start with a score line on a blank piece of fabric, and then I use my walking foot on my machine plus a seam guide. The seam guide is a little L-shaped tool that attaches to the presser foot and comes out to the side, and say I set it to 1.5 inch setting. And then I make a crosshatch grid, and then that is the basic lines of my grid. Okay. And then I can start building out on either side of those lines. So I've got a 1/4 inch line here.
On each side of the grid line?
On each side of the grid line. Wow. Oh. And then I've got 1/8 of an inch one on either side of the second group of lines.
Yeah, and doesn't that look
And then I just keep going, and this one is probably 3/16 outside that line.
Right. So just by keeping it consistent, the pattern, then you've got a plaid, a quilted plaid.
Yes.
So, but you haven't stopped at just straight lines. You've done some really fascinating things.
Now clamshells, you know.
We know how, clamshells are great.
It's boring, you know. Let's face it, it's
they're
boring.
beautiful.
It's boring. But it has its purpose.
Right.
So it's really easy to do this way with this template. And this is a template that is included in the book. There's a full page, and what you do is you buy full sheet label paper, which you peel off the backing of, and it becomes sticky. Nice. So before you peel off the backing, you cut out these templates, which looks like this, and you start at the top of your shape and do this scallop line across the top.
Interesting.
And then you take the red arrows on the template and match it to the bottom point of the scallops. And you just continue all the way across until you filled it up with clamshells. So you have your basic clamshell pattern.
Which you think is a boring design, but I think that's lovely, but I have a feeling you're going to take this even further.
So if you take that same clamshell template, turn your clamshells around and go back the other way. You match the little arc that's on the template to the tops of the clamshells and work back the other direction. And if you do a full layer of a second full layer of clamshells, you end up with this design, which is really pretty.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
Here's another one that is actually kind of a clamshell design, but we're going to use a different template on it. This is my S-curve template. It's actually 1.5 inch half circles. That go end to end to end. And again, you copy this on sticky label paper.
I love that tip, the sticky label paper. Who would have thought?
Right. And I'm going to use my free motion foot and stitch along the edge of this template. You don't stitch through the template, you stitch along the edge.
It's a guide.
Yes. And so you end up with this curve, and then you turn it around to the other side and stitch down the other side. And you end up with this type of shape. You fill up the whole shape going that direction. which ends up with
That's
this
pretty
shape.
neat.
You know,
I like that.
it looks a little bit like a mattress pad, but it's okay.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a start. And so if I turn this sideways and go back the
Okay.
other way, and I match up the green arrows on this template,
Right.
I can go ahead and stitch along this one,
Mhm.
and you can see the pattern starting to emerge. And if I go the other direction entirely,
Wow.
I end up with the pattern I call kissing clams.
Oh, kissing clams. That's cute. That is cute.
So it
And that
has
looks like a nice
has a lot
fill.
of movement to it.
Yes, it does. That's great.
Now, in the back of my book, there is a sheet of inchy ruler tape. And
Inchy ruler
I
tape.
didn't say itchy ruler tape. I said inchy ruler
Inchy,
tape.
like inch by inch.
Yes. So, and it is also on a sticky paper, so you can peel off these strips
Okay.
and use them as guides.
Does it
And
come sticky?
Yes.
Okay, comes
Yes.
sticky and it's already
And-
back there.
And you can, they put one sheet in the back of my book, but you can also buy a package of this inchy tape from C&T.
Okay,
So-
perfect.
Anyway, what I do is start with the score lines again.
And those are diagonal this
Right,
time.
this is diagonal. And I put one strip down right on the score line. And then I put another piece on either side of it.
Okay.
After I do that, I can then peel up the middle one,
Mhm.
which gives me a sort of grid. Marks that can go from side to side.
Oh.
So on this one, I do a diagonal and then a stitch an inch along the ruler tape. Then diagonal, stitch an inch, and keep going down
Interesting.
to leave that area. And then I do a mirror image of it.
Yeah.
So I end up with this little hexagon or kind of lozenge shape.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a chain.
Right. And so then,
It's an inchy chain.
thank you, good one. And so then I put two more pieces out to the side, and then I'd pull up this one
Uh-huh.
so that then I could do a row in between those.
So right now, this space here is
Right.
left. There's nothing in that space
Right.
there.
Right, I leave an area in between.
Okay.
So then, after I get that one done, then I move to the other side and I just keep working outward until I fill the whole space with those little lozenge shapes.
A whole bunch of inchy chains.
Yes, inchy chains.
I like it. That's great.
And once I've got this done, you know, it's an okay pattern by
Yeah.
itself, but it looks a little spacey, I guess. But once I've got this done, I've got all the corners that I need to go back the other way. I don't need to use the ruler tape anymore,
Right. Oh, that makes sense.
because I would go and overstitch the diagonal, do a
Okay.
straight across from corner to corner,
Okay.
row on the overstitching.
Mhm.
Go.
So
And
right
I'm
there,
doing
there's
exactly the same thing that I did on that first
Right.
layer. And I just continue doing that and link up all the corners. And I end
Wow.
up with this pattern that I call facets.
that is so cool. Ah, she's so creative. I just love watching everything Charlotte does.
Now, this one you could use the inchy tape on, but I've actually used 2-inch wide masking tape.
Hmm.
And I just taped it down on an Olfa cutting mat and then used a Sharpie to make my own marks on it.
Okay.
It's easy to do that way.
That's good. Yeah.
And for this one, I've also got 1/2-inch marks on it. And so I would put 3 strips down, pull up the middle one, so that then I have this area to work in, this area to work in.
Yeah.
And then I go from inch mark to inch mark, back and forth across
Right.
the area. So I
Okay.
have this little zigzag.
I
And
like the
once
zigzag.
Once it's done, I have this zigzag going across here like this.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't move the tape just yet because I actually want to leapfrog it over a little bit.
Right.
So I actually have stitching done under here, but I want to do another row exactly on top of it.
Okay.
So I leapfrogged the tape. So I had 3 strips originally and then pulled up the middle one again.
Right.
And then
Oh.
I just keep doing that all the way across so I
Wow.
fill up the space with these zigzags.
What a wonderful pattern.
Yeah, it looks
And
good
it's just by
that
going from
way.
dot to
Right,
dot.
Right. But if I could go a little further and go back the other way.
And of course she's got to take it further.
Uh-huh.
Oh, what else could I do with it?
So if I go back the other direction,
Okay.
and I actually use the 1/2-inch marks to stagger it down just a little bit. So then I would pull up the middle
Right.
on this one. I'll pull it up from here. And if I start stitching across there, I go from this mark to this mark, cross in the middle, this mark, and back and forth across, and I end up with this little shape. And if I do the same repeat of rows across each piece on this one, I end up with this design.
Oh my gosh.
I call this one box kites.
Box kites. I could see box kites in there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So this is your book. It's one line at a time. It's absolutely fantastic and full of lots of great ideas for fillers. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
My pleasure.
It was good. And thank you all for coming, and I hope you'll come back next month and see what I have for you then. Thanks for being with me.